Thank you. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rhoda. Thanks for joining me on Love, Forgive, Live podcast. This is a podcast you come to share your story, inspiration, motivation, inspire, and of course, help uplift somebody. I have a guest here that I'm very excited about because he's speaking about mental health and he's a huge advocate for mental health. And we were having a conversation and I got very excited thinking that, wait a minute, this is good stuff. We need to share this. And my guest, his name is Mr. Thomas Brown.
Yes.
But your middle name is Art.
Well, no. My middle name is Thomas. My first name is Christopher.
Oh man.
No, you're fine. But like I'm Thomas Brown Art is I because I do a lot of different types of stuff. I was always more of a visual artist. I was into film school. I did a lot of video art, photography, and I've only recently in life I've always had a passion to write, but I wasn't very good at it. I didn't have any confidence at it, and so I decided to climb that mountain and face that dragon. And I wrote a book.
I love this. You know what? I appreciate you facing that dragon and writing the book because honestly, I don't have the poem here, but it's in my poem book in my room. I wrote a poem called Heroes because heroes don't just become heroes. They fight. Yeah. They work with the self-doubt. They work with the inner monologue that goes on and that tells them you can't. Who do you think you are? You don't have it. You've never been good at it. You have to be literally fighting that battle every single day, slaying that dragon to allow you.
Go ahead. Totally. Well, there's a quote, like every single chapter of my book starts with a dialogue from a movie and lyrics from a song. And that plays into like because I use Joseph Campbell's monomyth of the hero's journey. It's funny that you bring up heroes because I use the monomyth of the hero's journey as the actual framework of my own personal story, with each chapter being titled a step in Joseph Campbell's monomyth of the hero's journey. And there's one, I forgot what chapter it was, but I quoted George Clooney's character in Three Kings. And he's like, here's the thing about courage. You do the thing that you're terrified of, and then you get the courage afterwards, not before.
Yes. I love that. It's true.
Sometimes you just have to go through an experience, soiling yourself. And then, you just get through it. And then you're like, like you clean yourself up and you get ready for the next bout.
Yes. That is definitely true because yes, that's what makes a hero because they don't have the answer. They don't know what to do, but they're still going through the stuff that makes them feel dragged down, and they still do what they have to do because they don't really have the answers, but all they know is they can't stop.
Where
they are.
Yeah, I could do this all day. Captain America in the MCU movies.
Yes. Well, your book, 2012, A Bicycle Odyssey. I love the title. One thing that you hate it?
No. It plays into my love of cinema. And it's kind of like the title itself is an Easter egg. Like I love science fiction, and I'm more of a Star Wars guy, which is more which is more fantasy. But like 2001, A Space Odyssey, I love that movie. I remember being like in high school, and that movie just blew my mind, visually and narratively speaking. And so it was the title of the book is more of a nod to that film than anything else.
I like that. I'm glad because we get inspiration anywhere from everywhere.
Yeah, it's all around us.
Yes. All you have to do is just be present for it, open for it. And honestly, be open for that moment to illuminate itself. And then when you recognize it, you begin to move towards it. Even though you may not fully comprehend what is going on, but you are just aware that something different is going on. You know what? I'm going to write this.
Yeah. I would like to, like, I feel like back to the idea of like inspiration is everywhere. I feel like all the original ideas were already discussed by our ancient ancestors around the campfire. Like that, like
Yes.
like culture just kind of adds like some spice to it. It
Yes,
takes
I agree.
the same stories, the same. I mean, because all stories come from a human. It comes from our
Yes.
humanness. So it's just like expressing. Each of us have our own challenges based on what I call the meat suit that we are within. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We have through that. There's also like there's different challenges, there are different perceptions, different understandings of
Yes.
what it is to move through this world. But on a
Yes.
fundamental level, at the very foundation, like
Mm-hmm.
all stories, whether it's told in a painting, a poem, a song, a book, a
Mm-hmm.
movie,
Mm-hmm.
it all comes from that same spot, that
Yes.
same space.
Yes. Yes. And I agree because I come from Ghana, West Africa. That is how stories are told. You
Just
would
around the
sit by
campfire.
the fire, grandma, grandpa, uncles are sitting down, and then the kids gather around
Yeah.
and they tell the story. And it's one of the most important memories that I hold with my grandmother and my great grandmother. And they would sit and just talk. And then my dad used to even give us riddles. And kids will be struggling to figure out this riddle. On occasion where I was also raised in Canada, Western Canada, in Saskatchewan, and I have a brother in Calgary, so we went to spend Christmas there. And he has 4 children, and these kids were sitting there, and then their cousins also came for that day. And after dinner, we cleared the table, and I see dad sitting there, and he's having a conversation with these kids. And then all of a sudden, he started giving them riddles. And these riddles, I'm like, man, why is he doing this to these kids? They can't think about it. But these kids were excited. I was shocked.
Yeah.
Nobody had their device with them. Nobody's head was down this way. They were like glued to grandpa. And he just kept giving them riddles after riddle after riddle. And then all of a sudden you start seeing who is the best critical thinker come
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. That's
And I'm
awesome.
like, whoa, I had no idea. Storytelling is a great way to connect both the past, the present, and the future, but at the same time, connect the young people to what is happening
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what has happened.
I think storytelling is really, really important for me. As I was talking about before we started recording, like awareness and self-awareness is the only game in town. And one of
Yes.
the ways that I navigate through my own self-awareness and try to cultivate my self-awareness is through storytelling. Not only through telling my story, but like watching stories, listening to stories. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're reading a fictional tale or watching a movie about fictional characters,
Mm-hmm.
you see yourself or what you would like to see as
Mm-hmm.
yourself in these characters. That's why you
Mm-hmm.
resonate with them. You resonate with their struggle.
Yes.
It may not like fighting off some dictator in like another galaxy far away, but
Mm-hmm.
like it's still a struggle of the hero of what they're going through, of like, because their journey is all about figuring themselves out, what they're made of, what
Yes.
their
Yes.
destiny is, and
Yes.
those are just all big words to really ask the bigger question is like, who am I and what am I meant to do? What am I meant to be while I'm here in this
Powerful
space and time?
questions to ask. Very
Yeah,
powerful
important,
questions.
important.
Extremely
Uh,
important. Extremely
they're they're
important.
the they're the questions of self-awareness.
Yes. 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 I agree completely because see, I was one of those strange kids, I'll call it that. I used to ask my grandmother those questions.
Yeah, yeah,
And back home, when children are asking these type of questions, elders will always tell you, you better stop asking those questions. You're not going to get the answers to that. And then they'll say, oh, it'll confuse you. Stop doing that. But
yeah,
they didn't stop.
yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. I was exactly like that. I didn't have people telling me to stop asking. I just realized that I was the only one asking. Yeah. I was just like, why doesn't anybody else care about this, man? And I think the kind of like a riddle in itself is that there is no definitive written in the stars answer. It's part of your journey to figure out, a journey of self-discovery of like, what is it that turns you on, that gets you going, that motivates you, that inspires you, that like lights the fire inside? Like that's the thing that you should probably, dedicate yourself. And, for a lot of people, it goes, well, it's not sensible for me to do that. It's unattainable for me to do that. And Ethan Hawke said this in an interview recently that I saw, that if you're not willing, if you want to be an actor and you're not willing to be teaching acting in a 7th grade class when you're in your 60s, then what are you doing? Why are you even here? Like you have, if you love it, you will do it. You'll find any capacity to do it. Like, and that's the thing. Like, I'm not writing a book because I want to be famous. Or, I mean, hey, like, I know money doesn't solve every problem in the universe, but it helps. It helps. But like, if I wanted to be rich, like writing a book and publishing a book wouldn't have been like my doorway. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like a compulsion to express myself in this method. And that's why I do it. It calls to me. It makes me happy as I see, like, the worst thing in the world for me as a writer, the worst thing for a writer, I should say, because words are important. So we should articulate ourselves and our meaning. Is like that when you first open up a document and you just have this blank page and you're just like,
oh, that's frightening.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many notes you have, you know what I mean? But like when you're, and that's for anything that you find passion for, you're lucky. Not all of us can be LeBron James, where you just wake up, you pick up a basketball, and you were just, on this tier, like that's unparalleled to what everybody else has to do to get to craft their skill. So there's always gonna, and I'm sure even he still has to like deal with stuff. He had dragons to overcome and mountains to climb.
Absolutely.
But like, just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you're not supposed to put effort into it. And effort, that's the workout.
Yes, absolutely. Every talent has to be nurtured. Every talent had to be used and paid attention to, because if you don't do that, it becomes, honestly, for lack of a better word, wasteful.
Or it wilts and dies.
Yes.
And like one of the things that I learned on my bike ride, there's a few things that I learned, but we ended at an art retreat center because I really feel like art and creativity is really important for navigating self-awareness. At least that's how I do it. So I remember like the artist is his name's Allyson Grey. The Art Retreat Center is the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. It's in Wappinger Falls, New York, so a couple of hours outside of the north of the city. Like he's kind of a rock star in the realm of art that he does. He is a I always mess up the word. It's not transformational artist, but visionary artist. All right, a lot, and the visionary arts has been kind of dominated by psychedelic use and using the meta and going, you know what I mean? So, because it's very visually stunning. And he shows in his arts how the physical body is connected to the energy fields of the body, outside of the body, and the spiritual realms above. Very, very spiritual stuff. Uses a lot of symbolism in all of it. But as I was walking, so when we got to the Art Retreat Center, we were invited to talk about our journey. They have like monthly full moon ceremonies, and they have like huge events, and they have like musicians and speakers. And so they invited us to speak. But like, I just noticed that like there were so many people that were just wanting to be near him. And it dawned on me that like we kind of have this sickness in our society where we would rather be close to greatness than cultivate our own. And I think when it comes to art and creativity, that there is this unspoken agreement between artist and audience, is that like, you know, as you're watching me, you give me energy. As I create, I give you energy. But that's not where this transaction stops. All right. If I am creating something that you find to be, you know, pleasurable or powerful or beautiful, and it inspires you, your task now is to take that currency of inspiration and go out into the world and create something of your own, even if it's just for you, or rather than just like your circle of influence. But go out there, take that energy and create something beautiful. Because as we started this conversation, like inspiration's all around us.
It is. So use it. Going in circles because it's a sharing and collaboration. And then becoming mindful and seeing where that does your own energy add to this, give it value beyond what you just received, which allows it to elevate it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
But a lot of time, that exchange of sharing and appreciation, we stop. As you said, we stop. And I feel like sometimes it may be due to the fact that some people tend to downgrade themselves.
Yeah. That's definitely one of them.
And it goes back to the slaying that dragon of the self-doubt, of the inner stuff saying, no, you can't do it. Come on. He's wonderful. He's amazing. And we start comparing. Oh, I've heard a lot of the stuff we do to talk ourselves out of our own greatness.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing. Like, there's a really great quote about comparison, and I completely lost it, and I apologize. But
that's all right.
Like, comparison is the enemy of inspiration. It's something like that. Like, you shouldn't compare yourself. Your journey is your journey. I remember having this conversation with this painter at the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. And she was like, oh, I'm working on this. I have this idea that I'm kind of like running through in my head about my next painting. I was like, oh, really? What is it? And she's like, I'm not going to tell you. You'll steal it. And I was like, what? I was like, there's no original ideas. Like if you and I were saw something in the exact same way, which that's not going to happen. We can come close, but we're we can come close, but we're like, you know, like
because your perception is different.
Yeah, our avatars alone is gonna like give us a different perception of it and angle of that. So like I was just like, I was like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, even if we were told, even if we were told to like, this is our assignment, like, because of our difference in our different experience and our different personalities, like, we're going to create something different.
Exactly. Everybody's lens is different.
Yeah. It was just, it kind of like, I was shocked when she said that. I was like, what? Like, I'm a photographer. You're a painter. What are you talking about?
No.
Like,
one goes to the left, one goes to the right. And say, yeah, this okay. I see something different. No, mine looks this way, and then you start describing it, and that person may not ever get it because their perception, their experiences, and their lenses are completely different. Yeah. And that's what I wish the art world and any form of creativity, we will have the trust in the fact that we have an open level of sharing and understanding that no matter how much we try to individuate our own art, there will be some sort of similarity, but it will never be exactly as the next person.
No.
I've seen people who are great artists try to paint Starry Night, and they never get it exactly like that. Nobody.
Yeah. I've got a very good friend. I love him very much. He was actually the first editor of my book. He's like, you got to get this out. You got to get this out because somebody somewhere out there is writing the same story. I was like, no, they're not.
Because it's exactly yours or it's yours.
Yeah. I was like, no, that's not happening. I was like, I understand where you're coming from with that point, but like I've read a couple different cross-country bicycle ride books, and mine is vastly different. And each one of those were vastly different because they had different reasons for going.
Yes,
they are. They did a different route. They interacted with different people, and it's just like we're very similar. All of us are. Humanity has a lot of similarities, but we're also experiencing things differently. And I think storytelling is what how we learn not only from about ourselves but from each other too. There's only and that's where with the self-awareness is that I've kind of broken that down into for me personally, I'm not going to say this is what is what is for me, is that if once I start cultivating self-awareness, that kind of expands into spatial awareness, and then which is my environment, the people that I interact with on a daily basis. And then from there, I can hopefully start cultivating social awareness. I'm a heterosexual white male. That's my view. And that's where my filter is. It's how the world sees me. It's part of it how I see the world. So it's important to cultivate that social awareness, to have a greater understanding of what other people have to walk through. And my empathy, no matter how far I expand it, it can reach light years, but I'll still never know what it's like to be a person of color. I'll never know what it's like to be a woman. I'll never know what it's like to have a different sexual orientation. I won't even know what it's like to be have a different faith and religion. You know what I mean? This is me, but I think it's important that we do the best that we can to learn from each other, to have a greater understanding of our human family.
Absolutely. And I completely agree, because that's how we learn. We learn to become one with one another, because we're aware of where our own limitations are. And then we are open to the learning and say, hey, maybe, you know what? I don't understand. And I don't know what this is about. Educate me.
Yeah.
Let me learn. That openness, to be open to learning, I think that is one of the biggest clue of self-awareness. Being open to learning.
Yeah, totally. And I have the perfect job for being a self-published writer. I work at a library. All right. And I'm a supervisor at a library. And a lot of times when I'm trying to convey a message to one of my staff, I try to rather than just beat them over the head with a policy change or something, I try to share a story. I feel like they relate better with a story. Sometimes it's about me. Sometimes it's completely fabricated. It could be, sometimes I'll take a Zen koan and I'll give them, traditional, American names and change, just make something up like that. Just to the idea is that the message is in the story, not in the storyteller,
And I love that. Now, one of the things I read about your bio is about the urge or the desire to write this book. What motivated you? What put this desire in you for you to go after it, run after it, and then start putting it on paper? What was that?
Well, I mean, I would probably say it all started back in 2001 when I lost my brother Mark to suicide. And just,
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. It's definitely, it's weird to hear that, because it's just so much part of my story. And I wouldn't have the partner that I have now if I hadn't lost my brother to suicide. And maybe we'll get into that. but I had a big issue with codependency. If you were good at BSing how much you understood the world, I would gravitate for you, even if you were full of it. You know what I mean? If you had the confidence that you knew what you were talking about, I would kind of gravitate. And I thought, and if you had like enough charm and charisma, like I would gravitate towards that type of person. And it usually wasn't the healthiest person. And I was just so confused and scared with my place in the world and how to do it. I love my parents to death. They put food on the table, clothes on my back, a roof over my head, but they weren't the wizards and sorcerers that I think I needed in life. You know, they taught me compassion and love, and I think I got a lot of that stuff from them, which is very vital to being a decent human being. But when it came to like complex ideas and, you know, understanding who you are in this world, I just was not going to get that from them. And I was the person like you. I was asking those questions and I was just like, what is going on? And since I didn't have anybody giving me like legit answers from my family, I was just like, So I was just confused and scared. And like, if you acted like you had it together, even if you weren't a healthy person, I was like, okay, you're pretty confident in what you're saying, you know? So I would hang out with like individuals like that. And so we were kind of like, we had our own little rebellious crew, a lot of substance abuse and a lot of like partying, excessive partying. So like when I lost my brother, like that was just like another thing, another drop in the bucket. And I kind of swirled the drain for a while. And I got to a point where I needed to make a change in my life. And I realized that there's all these things that I wanted to do and I just needed to stop being afraid. And the first step that I made is that my parents' church was a very progressive church. Meaning like they were open to other faiths. They were open and affirming to people of other sexual orientations. They were all about social justice. They felt that art was just as powerful as secular art was just as powerful as scripture, and that it was important that we take care of the planet. And I was like, I'm not a Christian, but I think that platform is awesome. And so the minister wanted to walk across the country and talk about that. And I was like, I want to go with you guys. And so I quit work and I was going to be just a walker, but they had a filmmaker going along. They're like, would you like to be his assistant, a non-paid assistant? And so I kind of had like seminary on the road and film school on the road.
Exactly. How wonderful.
Yeah. So that was kind of like my first step into like breaking out of that codependency mode. And then I still had a lot of it with me because when I got back from the walk, I was still in this like really bad relationship with this woman that I'd been in for far too long. And so it was like my next step was, you know, I started going to film school and all that, but my next step for my development was finding therapy and getting into it to see a therapist. And for a few years, she really helped me tear the onion of my character apart. And I think it's because of her that I was even open to the idea of doing a bike ride. So therapy was really, really helpful of just like knowing what I wanted. So I was like, you know, like, so my brother died in 2001. The cross country walk was in 2006. I finally found myself in therapy around 2008. Started dating somebody else. And then I met somebody who had lost his brother to suicide. And I started dating this woman and had this new friend who had a similar, you know, loss as me in around 2010. And that's when we kind of had the discussion to do a bike ride. But it wasn't until 2011 that we're like, all right, we're doing it. We need to start organizing. So it's just like all these, you know, different steps that took me, you know, by the time we were ready to ride our bike, I had already come to peace with the fact that my brother was dead and that I lost him to suicide. But for me, the bike ride was like, I want to know what other people's stories are. I want to know what
Ooh,
their experiences are.
chills.
You know, like I want to know how they struggle with that loss.
Yes.
Did they have community? Did they have support? What tools did they learn along the way? So we had the opportunity to speak. I pretty much like to create the route. Once we knew what the route we were going to do, based on some research and also where family was, because if you look at the book, you know, everybody's like, that doesn't take 7,000 miles to ride to go across the country, and you're correct in that assessment. So we decided to do a giant W. Starting in San Francisco, all the way over here, and ended all the way up here. So once we had a route that we wanted to do, I just started cold calling crisis centers and being like, hey, do you have support groups? This is something that we want to do. So with that, we had the opportunity to speak with people who lost loved ones to suicide, mental health advocates, therapists, social workers, people who ran crisis centers, lawmakers, and all that, and even first responders. And we were just able to learn as much as we could from other people's experiences and kind of share things that we did. So at the beginning of the bike ride, and like this philosophy that I have is ever growing. It's always changing. It's always evolving. But I was able to kind of promote the idea of you know, looking at your life like a story, you know. And everybody, like when you look at a movie, it's usually in a 3-act play format. Yes. And we all have the main character has an inciting incident, you know, and that's where they're in their normal world, and then something wild happens, and they're projected into this unknown space, and the entire story is them trying to navigate that, learn how to live this new life, you know. And they'll usually stumble and fall along the way, and they'll have one great stumble before they rise up and you know, slay that dragon. So I just invited people to really think about that. It was you know, it took a while for me to find the words to articulate it. I had every intention, to answer your question, I had every intention to make a documentary. Every intention, because I was a filmmaker. I was going to film school, and I really was good at making mini documentaries in school. And in order to do it right, we needed to raise money to have a support vehicle, because I didn't want to bring my vehicle, and then hire somebody to drive it. Yes. And make sure that they know how to use cameras, you know, and you know, that's another part. Yeah. So we didn't raise that much money when we started. And we started without a support vehicle, even though people helped us all through California. But once we got back to Arizona, which is where I live, I just was like, hey, we need to make these events. We don't have to be riding our bicycles at the same time. That's right. I'll just bring my truck, and I'll ride one day and you drive, and then Zach can ride one day and I'll drive. And it was beneficial, because when we left Arizona, Zach had an infected tooth and he had to have oral surgery. So for the first week after we left Phoenix, once coming back through on tour, he drove and I did all the riding up until we got to New Mexico. And, you know, there were some times in New Mexico where I got really sick. And so I had to do the driving and he just did the riding. And it was beneficial, because you can't ask all these people, all these organizations across the country to schedule an event to speak with their community. And then you're like, oh, you know, he got sick, we couldn't ride today. You know what I mean? We had to get there. So it was just better. It was better to bring a support vehicle with. So I still brought my camera. I shot a lot of
Good.
footage, as much footage as I can, and I used it anytime we interviewed a bunch of people, and I
Mm.
set up my camera and I interviewed them, set up questions, and talked for about an hour and a half, 2 hours with dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And when I realized that I was just going to write, I actually like reached out to my film instructor, and she's like, just be there.
Oh,
Don't
wow.
worry about the film. Just be
Great.
there and experience it. And I knew from like the walk across the country, like it was
Mhm.
important for me to write notes. So every
Yes.
single night before I went to bed, like I had like a little diary about who I met, things that
Yes.
I learned. So when I got back home, I just, before we even like finished the bike ride, I knew that like I always wanted to be a writer. People always made fun of me for the way that I wrote, because I was a
Mhm.
horrible speller and I'm not very grammatically, sound.
That's okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
that's what editors are for.
Yes, thank you.
So I just made the decision before we even ended the bike ride. We were like somewhere on the East Coast, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
I'm writing a book. And
That's
so when I came back, like I had like all these notes, like a daily journal, and
mhm.
I had all these interviews on camera. So, and the interviews really helped me to go back and listen to
Mhm.
some of the interviews so that I could like
Mhm.
put that information into the book.
Yeah.
So just for using
Amazing.
direct quotes. So
Totally amazing, because you didn't even realize you were going to write a book, but all the materials you needed
mhm.
to write the book was already available to you. That's so powerful. You were
Yeah.
already being equipped with everything you need to be an amazing writer, but you didn't even know it until you
Yeah.
started writing and you're like, oh, I got this, I got this.
Yeah, 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 and it really helped. And so like when I got home in November, we started on March 1st of 2012.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
finished on September 27th of
Mhm.
2012. And then I took like a month and a half to kind of like, we didn't leave the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors until October 1st. We stayed there for a
Wow.
few days.
Mhm.
They gave us free room and board for a couple of days.
Mhm.
And we had one more event in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and after that we went our separate ways. And I still had the truck, so I kind of like zigzagged around the country. I had some money that left over, and I just zigzagged around the country, stayed with
Mhm.
friends, stayed with like old friends and people that I met
Mhm.
on the road,
Mhm.
and I just kind of processed, because I remember after the walk across the country, it had such a profound effect on me that I made the mistake of rushing back home.
Oh my.
You know what I mean? So like with the bike ride, I wanted to like, I'd just undergone such a massive, like conscious, like transformation and
Mhm.
like just a shift in perception that like, I just needed to take my time home. And even before I came back home, I went back to the Golden Gate Bridge, which is where we started.
Mhm.
And I like the day that we started the bike ride, it was a cold, gray March in San
Oh.
Francisco, and
Oh.
going up and down those hills just with torrential downpour for 50 some miles. And when I got back there in November,
Mhm.
it was sunny. It was beautiful. There wasn't a
Oh.
cloud in the sky. So it was just like this massive juxtaposition. So I even went all the way back to San Francisco before I went home. And then once I got home, I waited till March. I started kind of
Mhm.
like work. In January I started working on outlines and
Mhm.
for the book. I knew that I wanted to use Joseph Campbell's Monomyth of the Hero's Journey as the framework for the chapters,
Mhm.
but I didn't really start diving into it until maybe like March or April of 2013.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And listening to you talk, here you were taking the steps to do what you got to do. And once you're doing it, what surprised you about the fact that you took the step to do it? What surprised you about it?
It wasn't a surprise, but it's always kind of like, hmm. It I learned this in the bike ride. Or I'm sorry, I learned this when I walked across the country with my parents' church. I saw it when I understood a little bit of it when I read the book, The Lord of the Rings, and I saw it even more after I saw the movie. But it kind of like surprised me in my own personal experience when I came back from the walk. And one of the things is that is a little jarring, even though now it's expected, is that, and this is going to sound mean, and I don't mean it to be mean, not mean for me, but like mean for my community. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? You are the one that had this experience. When you leave, like, people are glad to see you and they're glad to have you back, but they're not ready for the person that's coming back.
Yes, you've evolved into a being that they were not expecting.
Yeah. Because like they were still in the same like pattern.
Yes.
And when you're traveling across a country, the only constant is change.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
we can be sure of.
Yeah. Like we would stay in a place maybe a week at a time. We had a few places that we're like, hey, like let's rest our legs and like not ride for a week, and we'll stay in this town. Yeah. But like we're just churning and going and like having these like really intense conversations like a couple times a week. You know, we'd be riding for like 8 hours during the day out in the elements, and then we'd come and we'd like have like a 3, 4, 5 hour emotionally charged conversation about suicide and mental health. We came back, and I came back, and I just knew that like, you know, people were going to want to give me hugs. They were going to like say, hey, we're glad you're back. But nobody really asks. There's like 1 or 2 people about like the community, out of the community that I had, that were like, tell me a story.
Wow.
So I always make it a point that when somebody goes to another country for the first time, you know, or somebody is gone and they're hiking across some massive trail for the summer. When they come back, like I'm like, and they're kind of like, whoa, you actually care. Yes. I asked them, like, tell me some stories, man. Like, what were like what was the worst day of the trip? What was the best day of the trip? Like, who's the coolest person you met? Who's the weirdest person you met? You know, like, it's just, that's the one thing, is that when you go on this journey, sometimes the boon that you find at the end of the quest is for you. You know, it's for you. That's what alchemy is. All right. Alchemy isn't about lead and gold is a metaphor. It's not actually about taking lead and transforming it into gold. You're lead and you're trying to transform yourself into gold.
Yes.
And you know, like that's what it's good. Now that I had some space, like the thing that I offer to the world is my book. Yes. You know, and it's up to you. You can read it if you want to, or you don't have to read it. You could purchase it if you want to, and you don't have to purchase, but it's there in case you think you might need it. So yeah, it's always like one of the funniest things is that like some people just don't care. And that's nothing that doesn't really say anything about you or their feelings about you. It's just more about where they're at. Yes. And you shouldn't take offense to it.
Yes. And that's the passion. You have to have that passion to want to create, to want to do this, to want to share your story and write your story, because as you are, so is the fueling. Because you write, you get more motivation to writing. And because you're motivated to write, you keep going. The strangest thing is that passion is so overwhelming. And it engulfs you because you're constantly writing that and using it to do what you want to do. The strange thing is those around you cannot resonate with that passion.
You're telling me I am fully aware that when I have an idea about something and I'm start talking about it, especially like at work, like I get really like I need to have like a creative project. I'm not in a creative role. I'm not in a creative role at work, but like I like to like do these sub projects. Like I'm, even though I'm not a programmer in the library, I'm now the executive producer of our podcast that we are in the process of creating. So when I get really excited about something, I kind of look manic. You know, like people like are like, oh my God, like this sounds overwhelming. And I'm just like, no, it's going to be amazing. And I just like,
yes, because you're writing that passion, because this is what greatness is made out of. When it comes to you, because you're so ready and open and at the cusp of this, when you receive it, you run.
Yeah.
Those around you cannot see that. They cannot understand it. And they don't know that that's what you're writing on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're counting on that to propel you to even greater heights. When that's happening, the rest are like, what is he up to now?
Yeah.
He's always up to something. He's always excited about something. Well, because once you taste that passion juice and it motivates you to do more, I honestly believe you begin to see the world differently.
Yeah. It is. And I one thing that I have to like also state too is that like it is a privilege to be in a space to cultivate that passion.
Yes.
You know, not everybody in the world has that. Not everybody in this country has it. Like working in a library, we deal with a lot of people who are homeless and, you know, they're just like in survival mode. But like, if you have it, I think it's just important. And there's going to be people that are just haters, you know, like they're not willing to do it themselves. So they'll like kind of like put you down or they'll talk bad. I even had one person when I was writing the book, he's all like, dude, that bike ride happened like 3 years ago. Why are you even wasting your time writing the book? And I was just like,
what?
Yeah. I was like,
it's extremely relevant.
I was like, and not only that, but I was just like, I don't even think that question deserves an answer. Like like I think you need to process why you would even ask that question or why you even feel that way before I would feel compelled to answer that question. So and I just, you know, it's just like
it's very important.
I love the people that I interact with. I love my acquaintances. I love my friends, but it's astonishing that they don't have that thing that they're passionate about.
Yeah.
You know, it's astonishing to me that like they never found a thing. They're very family oriented, and I think it's important to be family oriented, but you can be both.
Yes. And there's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it. I realize that I'm a little bit of a lunatic, and I worked with children for 16 years, and that I was like, I became at least self-aware enough to like, I'm probably too much of a lunatic and selfish person with my own passion to bring somebody else into this world. So I'll be a teacher, you know, like, or like I'd rather be somebody that is like a coach to young people than a parent.
Yes, I completely agree. I can resonate with that thought because I only have one child and he's like 23 years old.
It's a lot.
Believe me. And I see people with 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm always telling them, wow, I don't know how you do it. I'm amazed. You're an amazing person. Because
go ahead. Sorry.
When it comes to creativity or allowing your passion to, I don't think I will be able to do the things that I'm doing now if I had to raise a lot of children.
Yeah.
Because the amount of energy it takes, focus, and dedication to bring children is powerful. And it's a lot.
Yeah.
You have to be on point. You have to be constantly thinking ahead of what they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I mean, if you don't, things get lost in the process and you lose yourself. I would confess this. I lost myself. And I was so lost. So yes, I hear what you're saying.
And nobody can tell you that. Like I thought there's some people at work that I'm friends with that I have in my mind, and I'm like, yep, that sounds like them. And you know, my mom passed away back in May of 2023. Thank you. Oof. And it was a very matriarchal household. Like my dad did all the physical stuff. My mom, like knew every single bill and every single account and all of that stuff. Ran that ship. My dad is getting to the point where like the physical stuff he can't really do that much anymore. He lives by himself still, but he can get around. He's less than like a quarter mile away from me. And I now had to learn everything that my mom knew. So like I didn't have 9 months to like prepare myself for having a 78-year-old toddler, you know. And it's not like he's gonna and like he's just gonna like, because he's 78 years old. It's not, he's beyond his prime. He's just gonna keep like descending and descending and descending until he's gone. So like, you know, I don't have to like chase him around, make sure he doesn't stick anything in light sockets. And, you know, if people call the house, he doesn't pick up the phone unless he knows the number. So I don't have to fear about him, you know, being scammed. But I had to get like a medical life alert for him. Like I have to like make sure that his bills are paid. I have to manage his accounts for him. Just, you know, and that's a lot. And I like, it's still like not even close to like having a newborn, toddler, you know, preteen, teenager, and all that. Like I couldn't even like wrap my head around all that.
Oh no, the demand on a parent is a lot. And like I said, I always commend people, and I was like, wow, you're amazing. You're 3, 4. Wow. I'm honestly, it's not because I'm downplaying the sacrifices and the amount of time they put in. I honestly admire that, and I'm
totally
like, wow.
It's mind blowing, like the amount of bandwidth that one has to use in order to make sure, you know, this life that they created is okay.
Yes,
just okay.
Yes, okay. It's funny you said that. I used to run a business helping new mothers transition into motherhood. So when they come home with their baby, they would hire me before the baby's born. And sometimes I would go and meet them at the hospital and go home with them. Or as soon as they get home, they call me, hey, we're home. And then I get home, they hand me the baby. I tell mom, go to bed. And then I help her get her bearings, you know, make sure her nutrition is on point, because that's going to affect the breast milk for the child. I'm keeping the baby at night so they can sleep. I would do that for them. They would hire me, and then I would do that. But the beautiful thing is when I'm done, I'm gone. That's it.
Yeah. That was the same with me when in after school programs. I would take care of kids for 6 hours and then like go. And I think like an important thing, and that I try to like bring up to my friends, just to like have this all make sense of what I'm talking about, is that like you don't have to quit your job and ride your bike across the country.
No.
Like it's important. This is where your responsibility comes in, but it's important for you as an individual to find the universal in the mundane and in the ordinary. Is that like, don't get bogged down by routine. Don't get bogged down by pattern. Like it takes effort to be able to do that. It takes time and effort, but like it's not unattainable. You know?
Completely agree.
You got to let yourself be a little wacky and weird from time to time.
Yes. And I think that's one of the things that I used to tell parents when I was leaving the family after staying with them 2 weeks, 10 days, or 3 weeks, and however long they need me. When I'm leaving, they're like, oh my gosh, you're leaving? What am I? And I'm like, oh, you're going to be fine. No. And I'm like, I've written everything down. The child is already on schedule. Sleep is handled. Some babies, I would teach them sleep training before I leave. You know, and I'm like, okay, you've got everything. You know everything. I've given you everything you need to know. all you need to know is just be present and hear your child. That's all.
Yeah.
And then they're like, but how am I going to know the child is going to be okay? And I said, I tell you what, I'll tell you a little secret. And usually, and they lean in thinking, okay, what's the big secret? If the child is breathing, you're doing an amazing job. Yes. Yeah. Is the child breathing? Is the baby breathing? Bravo.
Yeah.
You're doing an amazing job. They're like, what? And I said, yes, that is the most important thing. Safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the most important thing. The child is breathing, right? You're good. Because when you're breathing, they'll scream at you, I want some food. They're breathing, they said, I'm wet. They'll scream at you. I said, change me. They don't like this. They said, I'm sleepy. They'll scream at you. So as long as you're breathing, they will talk to you. You just gotta just be present. And they're like, what? And I'm like, honestly, that's the most important thing. If you can do that, it's good. Don't worry about the house being in a mess. Don't worry about anything else. It'll all be done. But right now, the most important thing is the child is breathing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll be good. Because sometimes you say it and it sounds like a joke, but it's the truth. Because you don't want, anyone coming out with some other, well, these are the tips. No, forget it. Go to the basics.
Yeah.
And we're all here to tell our story. And through the process of spending time with this baby and learning them, because I always say that your children will teach you how to parent them.
Yeah.
And it became something that I became aware of watching my child. Yeah. When people would say, you should do this, I took the time to just watch her and listen and pay attention to what her needs were. And I realized that she was telling me how to teach her. She was telling me how to parent her. And then when I focus on what her parenting style that she needed to reach her, it became easier for me. For before, it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with her? Because she was stubborn, she was strong, she was very opinionated. And I would look at everybody's child, they're like, oh, your child. I'm like, yeah, she's mine. Because I know she's unique like that. But most people would just cringe at the stuff that she would come up with because she would ask the hard questions. And so when she's coming, they're like, oh God, she's coming with the questions again. Because I remember when I was a child too. So looking at that, it gives me a chance to recognize this child needs to be parented the way they do. I remember trying to teach her a language. And I was just talking and said, oh, this is this. And she said, Mom, I don't learn that way. And I was like, well, this is what I did in French class. She said, Mom, I'm not you.
Yeah.
And I don't learn that way. You should teach me the way I learn. And I was like, well, but I don't know the way you, well, I'll tell you. And I was like, oh my gosh. Honestly, that dawned on me and I was like, you're right. We try to parent children by trying to figure them out. All we have to do is just pay attention, listen.
And that's like a base thing of like what I talk about with like, awareness and self-awareness. I often like look at like, when you're born, you're given a map.
Yes.
And on that map is a big X, and that's where the treasure is. Self-awareness is knowing where you're starting on that map. Like you gotta figure out who you are. Otherwise, you're gonna have the entire world telling you who you are and who you should be.
Oh, say that again.
So it's beautiful that your daughter knew enough about herself, at least in how to like learn, to be able to be like, hey, this not working for me. This is what I need.
Yes.
And that's important, like, and unfortunately, like self-awareness, like I was talking about earlier, it's one of those things. Some people are born with great self-awareness, just like some people are born knowing how to dribble or how to illustrate. But it doesn't mean you can't learn it. And,
that's right.
And like, it's not part of our society.
Yes.
It's not part of our formal education, which I think is a problem. most of the time people, there's right now, there's usually two primary paths of how somebody starts a journey of self-discovery. Either they've suffered a trauma, and at some point they find themselves in therapy or a yoga class, and that's usually out here, that's one of the things that happens. Or you're like, man, I need a humanities credit for my degree. I guess I'll take like Eastern philosophy or a mythology class. That should be a no-brainer. And then it opens them up and they're like, oh my God. Like,
I agree.
Maybe I should pay attention about life. It's
yes.
Because everybody else is like, well, you're not going to make money if you don't go get this degree to get this job. And it's like, I think you have to have a real passion about it. Especially like there's so many doctors. I'm like, did you just do this because it pays well? Because as a person, you suck.
Oh, you run into a lot of them like that.
A dime a dozen.
What?
A dime a dozen. I go in there. I've literally I go in and like even if it's like bad news, I try to make jokes. And I try to like bring some levity to the situation. And like, it's not like I'm trying to run from it's my body, it's my life. I'm the one who's got to deal with it. But like, hey doc, don't be so like morose when you're giving me this news. And it's like, they're like, are you done? I need to get to my next patient. I'm like, whoa. Yeah. Okay. I just bombed in this set.
Yeah. That reminds me, I had an automobile accident some time ago and I had a concussion, so I was having migraines. Well, I went to see the neurologist and the migraine was on because the drive to see the neurologist was like almost an hour, and with traffic lights, the sun, the brightness, it was just too much for me. By the time I got there, I had a migraine and I had my head in my hand. I was down that way with my holding on to my head, just in a severe pain. And then the intern comes and he's like, I need to take your vitals. And I'm like, don't touch me right now because I'm in a lot of pain. And he's like, well, I need to take your vitals. I was like, okay, I'm going to try. And then the thing that they do, they shine that light in your eyes.
Yeah.
It's not the thing to do when somebody's having a migraine.
Not only that, but like I had to have like some concussion tests myself. And I feel like some of those tests that they put you through, it's like you're a patient in an MK Ultra experiment. You're like, they're just are they trying to turn me into a Manchurian candidate? What's going on here? Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot when you feel good. I can't imagine you do that when you don't have a migraine.
Yes. So then, and I had sensitivity to light. So then he's trying to put this light in my eyes. And I'm like working so hard not to punch this young man. And then he's asking, and so I've got my fist clenched. And then he could see that I'm trying to talk this way. And he's like, oh, he's there. And I'm like, so he went and got the neurologist, and the neurologist said, oh, he should go and check on something for him. So the neurologist comes to talk to me and he said, tell me something. And I'm like, what? And he said, so tell me about what you do. And I said, what part? And he said, tell me about your job. What made you choose that job? So I told him. And then he said, what do you enjoy about this job? And I started speaking and talking to him. Strangely enough, about 10 minutes later, he said, how's the headache right now?
Took your mind off of it.
Yeah. So immediately I was like, he said, oh, what is the level? You said when you started, you were at 8. Where are you right now? And I was like, I think probably maybe 2 or 3. So he got so excited. He said, yes, this is real medicine.
Yeah.
Because you were having this severe migraine and I come in here and took your mind off, talk about something you enjoy that gives you joy. And he said, when you started speaking, you lit up.
Yeah.
I could see your passion. I could see the joy. He's like, your whole body your face just lit up. And it just puts you in that place. And all of a sudden, you were no longer a patient.
Yeah.
You were a happy person that loved what they were doing. Then he said, I think this is really your purpose. And I said, yeah, I really came to that conclusion before I started going after this career because I'm so passionate about it. And I think for me, that I became aware of how medicine can mean different things. Mm-hmm. Healing can mean different things. The stories we tell can mean different things because the stories we tell is medicine.
Yeah.
And it's a freeing type of medicine.
I mean, just when I met, and to give an example of that, when I met Zach and found out that he lost his brother, that was a guy that I rode cross country with, and I found out that he lost his brother to suicide.
Wow.
Knowing that he was the first person that I had met who lost somebody outside of my family, who had lost somebody to suicide, and just knowing that there was another person that understood that story.
Yes.
That traumatic story, it was super helpful.
Yes.
It was super helpful. It almost made me just that much lighter.
Yeah.
And that much
started showing up.
That much goes a long way. Yes. You know? So, and in going across the country and having all the conversations we had, like that much, I kept adding that much to it, and it just expanded and expanded and expanded and expanded to where I was just filled with other people's stories.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's powerful.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
And that literally tells me our stories is our tribe.
I totally agree, because I totally agree with that. Oh my God. I was the first time I've ever heard somebody put it like that. And I'm like grateful for you for saying that, because I'll tell you what, in my community, I'm the weird guy that lives on the hill outside of the village. And it took me a while to realize that. And it, through my own personal journey of self-discovery. So that's why like the codependency never worked. And I just became super dependent, or super independent, to where like, I am the outlier. I'm still part of the community, but I'm the wild person up on the hill barking at the moon.
That's okay.
People like, hey man, I need a different perspective. I need to go talk to that crazy person up there.
It's not crazy.
Yeah.
Right, because your tribe
yeah.
will find you. And the thing is, the more you become the real you,
yeah,
and allow that to become an outward of who you are. On the inside, it becomes outward, and everybody can see it now and recognize it, even though they may not understand it. But those who don't mind that will gravitate towards you because you draw them in. You're not trying to, but it's because of where you are. Your vibration is so high now. Now you're drawing them in, and these are the tribes because they're recognizing, I don't see why I fit in here. I don't, because that's what makes us so unique, because you don't seem to fit in. You don't seem to fit in. And the moment you're like, okay, I don't fit in, I'm just me. Okay. And then somebody goes, me too. Finally, I get somebody who understands me. Yes. The tribe is needed.
Yeah.
And our stories creates it. Our stories makes it noticeable, and they recognize, and you realize that they've been waiting for you all along. Everybody who resonates with that has been waiting for you all along. And every time you start the new passion, the new stories, because I can assure you, you're going to write more and more and more, because the inspiration is that powerful. Once you dip your toe, once you dip your toes in it, it just keeps flowing. It keeps flowing. Like I was telling you about the poem. I had no idea I'm a poet. I had no idea. 2020, June, I started writing. And it's so strange. And I look back and I was like, and I gave it to one of my friends. He's like, they sound like songs. And I was like, huh, they are? Okay, whatever that means. Somebody read it, they said, wow, the lyrics are pretty strong. And I was like, oh, okay, well, it's just my thoughts, an idea, how I feel. Sometimes I'm just sitting out there watching the birds or watching the geese. And I get an idea and I start writing. I'm maybe watching something on these social medias and so something occurs to me and I was like, huh. And I turn it off and I start writing. I'm watching, sometimes I'll watch some drama because I watch these and I'm outing myself here. Sometimes I do watch Korean dramas.
That's the first thought I had when you said dramas. I was like, she's watching K-dramas. Yes. A lot of the people that I work with watch those. So like that's the first thought that I had. That's hilarious.
Yes. So I'm not so weird after all. So I watch it and then sometimes I could be watching and then I see a scene. I was like, oh, this is a thought that I just had. And I'll turn it off and then I'll go writing.
Yeah.
Because our stories are our way of expressing our inner thoughts into the world.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And continuously, we have brothers and sisters who are walking around having probably some of these thoughts and not sure what to do with it, who share it. And then they're like, oh, I know. I think I know somebody.
Yeah.
He's not going to shush me away. He's not going to tell me he doesn't have time. We can share this. Maybe he can tell me his story. And whilst you tell them your story, they start thinking, I totally get that. Oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I think the same way too.
I mean, just also like with like the, a conversation like you and I are having, there's probably people that we'll never meet that might feel a little bit less alone just by hearing like the interaction that you and I have had in this time. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one of the good things that comes out of this kind of like technologically global connected community.
Yes. I used to have a hard time with technology. Boy, my English professor would just go like, what? She's doing what? How? What? I would go to class in the 90s and I would be so angry. I'll be like, he said, yeah, your assignment is on Blackboard. You have to log in. I was like, but this is not a computer class. This is an English class. Why are we going to the computer? He's like, this is the way of the world, young lady. Get in line.
I don't want paper. I want a digital feed of it.
And then he's like, you have to go and see the assignment there and then the deadline. I was like, but I would freak out. I would go to the library and I'm trying to do something. I'll press the wrong thing and I start crying. I'll get frustrated. I'll be like, oh, this is so hard. Why is he putting us through this? I thank him.
Yeah.
Because it was important. It's almost like fate knew that I needed to be pushed because I wouldn't do it if I had to make the choice.
Yeah.
And today, because with mental health, we're doing it online.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me we could ever do that.
I mean, just having like the therapist that I talk to now, like we met each other through like other means, but most of her stuff is like online and I'm the only client that she has that just speaks to her on the phone. Everybody else does like, they'll do like the video chat on the phone. And I'm like, nah, I've had enough conversations like with podcasts where I don't see the person I'm talking to. I could,
you can still understand.
You just listen and I will rant.
Good. And I love this. I think your journey has been a powerful one. And fair enough. How it started was not what you wish you had. You had to experience in order to propel you into this field or into this journey.
That's the
But
word. That's the word,
it, yeah,
experience.
experience. But you took this, as painful as it was, and started saying, hey, I'm not going to sit still. I don't understand. It makes no sense. It hurt. But you were like, okay, I'm just going to do what I can with my time now.
Yeah.
And then it came up, you came up with the bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say that bike ride was one of the things that gave you almost another vision to say, I can live through this?
Yeah, definitely. The one thing, like one of the other lessons that I had, like I said, I had some primary lessons, is that like I came to understand experience as a thing that is like, it doesn't care about your feelings. You know, the universe doesn't really care about our feelings. We have experiences, and our ego has to say like, this was a bad experience or this was a good experience. And isn't it always just like a pain in the butt that the bad experiences tend to linger
Yes.
longer than the good ones?
Yes.
But like I had this like moment in Florida where I was just like laying on some paddle boards, and me and my buddy Zach and then our host Rayla, we were all kind of like circling each other on these paddle boards. We weren't even talking to each other, and I just saw every single thing, every single experience that led me to where I was at that moment in time, and I was just filled with such peace and serenity. Is that like, that's where it dawned on me, like the universe doesn't care. It's nothing personal. It's, we have these experiences, and it's our ego that needs to define it in that moment as a good or bad thing, so that we can process the emotions that come with that good or bad thing. But in the end of the day, it's just an experience. So once I've processed those feelings, and I'm able to step away from the experience, I then get to choose, am I going to be a victim of this experience, or am I going to be a student of this experience?
Good question.
And it's one of the things that I've just learned, like even when I deal with headaches at work, like, okay, what's the lesson here? What's the lesson here that what am I supposed to learn about myself? What am I supposed to learn about my community? What is the lesson here? So that's something that's like drastically profound that I got from the bike ride. I mean, the woman, my partner in life, who's now lives with me here in Arizona, I wouldn't have met her if I hadn't gone on this bike ride. She was our contact at the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, and I was put in contact with her like in the second month, and we corresponded with each other professionally once a month. And then when I got to Manhattan, we called each other. We talked on the phone for about an hour and a half, and usually I'd always call the people, the hosts, like the night before we would arrive, and there'd be like a 5 to 10 minute conversation, like, this is what to expect tomorrow, this is what time we'll be in tomorrow, like this is what time we'll meet and all that. But with her, it felt like I was coming home, like somebody that
I
hadn't,
love that.
like somebody that I'd known for a long time, that I was just like, rekindling a friendship with. And so it's like, I have to ask myself, like, if my brother doesn't die by suicide, I don't go on a bike ride across the country for suicide awareness. And if I don't go on a bike ride, across the country for suicide awareness, I don't meet Sharon.
So powerful.
So it's just like what we deem as a negative experience can lead to a positive experience, just as much as what we deem as a positive experience can lead to a negative experience. So let's feel. It's important to feel the emotions and process them, but realize at the end of the day, am I a victim or am I a
Mm,
student? And I choose to be a student.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I'll complain and bellyache, but like once I got that out of my system, I'm like, all right.
You conform to the student.
I
Well,
just had to complain and whine, but
well, it's
now
part of
what
our
am?
human nature. We do these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Well, I will ask you this question. Thank you so much for coming, but I will also ask you this question. Knowing what you know now, if you had the chance to impart wisdom, knowledge, some advice to your younger self, what would that be?
I would take a knee so that we're eye to eye. I'd put my hand on his shoulder and I would say, Thomas, know thyself. And he would
That's
look at me and he'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, that's great because you should learn, you should know what you're talking about. I think it's really, I would just try to tell him the importance of understanding who he is,
mm-hmm.
and that on that journey of self discovery,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to encounter difficulties, and
Yes.
that it's okay to be scared.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to cry. It's okay to have fear and anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
but you still got to go through it no matter what. So people are going to tell you who you should be, how you should
Yeah.
act,
Yes.
and what you should believe in, and how
Mm-hmm.
you should uh, how your life should turn out, and what you should do. But
Mm-hmm.
it's important that you figure that out for yourself.
I love that. And this is so profound. One thing I'll say, you have to come back because I could talk all night.
Yeah,
Uh, but of course, I'm sure you're busy. You've got things to do, and then of course I gotta go to work.
yeah,
But one thing we have to understand is that this journey is amazing. As difficult as it is, it's amazing because we learn so much. And as the learning continues, we recognize that, oh, we are actually a student. This is school. This is Earth School.
yeah.
Oh, I get it now. Oh, why did the assignments have to be so hard? That's how we start figuring the rest out. So I thank you so much for coming
Thank
and
you. I'm
giving
super
us this
grateful.
beautiful, you're welcome, this beautiful story and journey and of discovery and the passions and allowing yourself, availing yourself for the passion to come through you and then recognizing how much of this doorway is so illuminated that you decide to step into it. And once you stepped into it, even though you didn't know what is going to happen or what you're going to see, what you're going to experience, you availed yourself to go through it anyways. And with that, you discover something powerful about yourself and humanity and how you relate into this world that, oh, it feels good. Thank you
Thank you so much, Rhoda.
for sharing the story, coming in and giving us your information. Now, how would our audience be able to
If you
um,
want to, if
touch with
anything you want, if you want to get in touch with me, if you want to follow me on the social media accounts, if you'd like to buy the book,
you?
2012, A Bicycle Odyssey. I also have some like a library of old podcasts
Mhm.
that are some conversational pieces. All of that you could find me at risephoenix.org.
RisePhoenix.org.
There's a link to everything. Link
Mhm.
again, a link to the book,
Mhm.
a link to the website, to the podcasts that I do from time to time, and a link to
Yes.
all my social media, and a little bit of a history about the bike ride, some pictures and
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yes.
So
Please do. And this is what I would like my audience to understand. Mental health is extremely important.
yes, it is.
You should never, ever, ever have to go through it alone. Ask for help. There's no shame in it. That little bit of vulnerability, you'd be amazed how powerful that could be. It could lead you to your healing. It could lead you to the help you need. It could lead you to the people who will help you stand when you feel like you cannot stand. Don't go through this alone. Seek the help. It does help. It does give you something. And those who have already lost their loved ones through their lives being taken on their own, don't go through it alone either. Don't cry alone in that closet. Don't stay in the bathtub wanting to just cry yourself to sleep, but rather pick up the phone, call people, talk to someone. Even, you know what, the strangers is just calling on your neighbor. You'll be shocked how much your neighbor will be actually have an ear for you,
Mhm.
and then say, oh, I know a therapist. Let's call them. Let's go to this thing. Maybe let's go to a yoga breathing class. That could also be another thing. Or let's go to this life coach. Let's talk to the person. The person say, hey, I think you need more than me. You probably need therapy. Everything counts. Don't do it alone. Seek the help. And there's hope on the other side, I promise you. But doing it alone is harder.
Definitely.
Okay?
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. And my name is Rhoda. Thanks for joining us on Love, Forgive, Live podcast. Those who want to get in touch with me, you may do so on love, LUV, the number 4, give, GIV, live, LIVE, at gmail.com. You may contact me, reach me, and of course, you can also reach Thomas anytime you feel like you need more information, you want to join his bike club, or you want to hear more about the bike stories, please contact him. And you'll be surprised. PhoenixRising.org.
Rise
Contact
Phoenix.
him. RisePhoenix.org. And then hear more stories, and you'll be surprised how much you have in common. Never ever know. Thank you. And one thing I'll say is please do come back, and we want you back to hear more story. I love listening to stories. I'm sure you can tell already. I
I
love.
I I've got a lot of them. I'm definitely down.
Yes. So yes, I'll definitely want to hear more about all your endeavors for sure. Thank you, and we hope to see you again